It's not going to be a European country, really, is it? Let's be honest.
No, that's the direction it's heading in.
When they say every corner of the globe, really what they mean is England.
6-8 million people, driven by immigration growth.
The east coast of North America, New York and Boston, we'll say mostly.
This is classic, like Galway.
Postcard Galway.
Come on the pier and drink cans on a sunny day.
Australia, right? That's every corner of the globe.
We're here on the Latin Quarter, bustling today, nice weather we've been having here in Ireland. We're now going to have our leaders sign an agreement to give preferential treatment.
You're never getting your country back.
The complaint coming was that these people had unfair treatment because it said they were being put together with incompatible cultures, and this was creating tension and conflict. So you're telling me like diversity and bringing people of different ethnic backgrounds together is unfair for these people and creates tension and conflict? Well, why are you doing that to the entire country then? You know, it's not working out in the direct provision centres, but it's going to work out for...
Yeah, well, you see, the Irish, Keith, we always thought we were kind of different. How's it going, everyone, and welcome to another video, and indeed welcome to the glorious delights of the fabulous Eyre Square in Galway here. Kennedy Park, Eyre Square, call it what you want. And I'm just traipsing through here. It's a Thursday evening, feels kind of like a Friday. And I have a few ideas for videos, but I'm kind of trying to think of what I might shoot today. So hold on a sec. I think I recognize somebody here. I'm just going to actually take out my iPhone here because it's got a great zoom. So there's a guy here no way, it couldn't be. I don't believe it. Keith, how's it going? Finally putting a face. Putting a face to the name. Yeah, good to see you. Just randomly sitting down in Eyre Square. Here's me struggling for an idea to shoot a video. And here we have Keith Woods
right now?
sitting there. Yeah, we're both on the camera. Let's go for a stroll. Welcome to the delights. I was just saying how. Yeah, exactly. You know, just shoot the breeze.
Oh, you never know who you'd meet around here.
You will. Yeah, you see, people are used to you sitting in front of your computer and stuff and doing the odd talk and all that. We can get to that in a little bit, but yeah, they're not as used to seeing you out and about in beautiful Galway city, which is.
This is where it's happening. This is the capital of culture. We've got some.
It is.
Far-right content creators.
Exactly. Yeah, we can get to that awful label in a bit. But yeah, you're not exactly living up to this stereotype. You know, boyo shouting into a camera from behind the steering wheel of your car. You know, you're a rather calm-looking, tall individual. I'm about 6 foot. I was 6'2". You're about what, 6'4"?
Around that, yeah.
I'm shrinking a little bit. The discs on my back are in my back.
I'm mugging people a bit more in the
Well, you can stand up straight with me.
Yeah. Tall, yeah.
So that's it, yeah. So we'll have to get a coffee somewhere, and I'll run a few questions by you. We've Nero here in the background, which is kind of nice. But let's go down to a slightly more Irishy cafe. How does that sound?
Yeah, sounds good.
So tell me this, or tell me nothing. You're living in Galway.
Yeah, I live in Galway.
Right.
Without giving too much detail, for the wrong suspects. But yeah,
right, okay.
I went to uni here, so I'm fairly familiar with the city, pretty fond of it. I've lived in different spots in Galway, because I moved a couple of times when I was here for uni, as you do. So yeah, it's a great city. I don't know how long you've been here.
I was born and raised here in Renmore, which is just a mile or two, literally a mile outside the town. Galway's great, like it's a lovely spot. I live a very quiet life, so I don't kind of partake in all the action. I don't go to the pubs anymore due to a sober living. So look, it's got a lot going on, but it's changed.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, you do notice the infrastructural problems, just the basic population issue. Like, I saw they did some ranking recently, and it's like the worst, or one of the worst cities in Europe for traffic congestion.
Wow.
Which is, like, ridiculous for a small city in the west of Ireland, right? I mean, that should be a very manageable thing. But I even noticed, I came here for uni, what is it now? Like, I guess it's like,
Jesus,
God, a decade ago. I'm getting old, like 10 years ago. But I mean, even when I was in uni, like over the course of those few years, you could notice the rent skyrocketing.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, it's virtually impossible. People getting houses here, I mean, it's as bad as anywhere in Europe.
Yeah,
Which, again, a small city west of Ireland, like there's so much. You would think it would be such an easy thing to solve housing here, but I mean, you see the change in face of Galway as well.
Well, my take on it is, Keith, we don't have a housing crisis. We've an artificial population growth crisis. It's just too much, isn't it? That's what I think. There's lots of houses. Yeah, it's great to build new ones, but what are we going to do? Just keep on building constantly?
There was a poll out recently about what Irish voters care the most about, what issues. And top by far was housing, and immigration was actually second, which is interesting because 4 or 5 years ago immigration used to be on like 1-2%. Now it's in the 20s. But I mean, the housing issue is totally a function of immigration, right? I mean,
I saw that poll, and I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how people square it in their minds because, like, we have a native birth rate here that's below.
How's it going?
We have a native birth rate here that's below replacement now.
Yeah, this is the thing.
And we didn't have a housing problem like 20, 30 years ago. So, like, how do people square this in their minds? Like, we only ever hear the discussion of housing supply from politicians, and we need to build more houses. But where's the demand coming from? I mean, obviously, it's a function of immigration, and we've had like the entire kind of political class, media class, have just refused to have that conversation for as long as this has been a problem.
Yeah, I fully agree. And as I said there a minute ago, like, where does it end? Like, what do you do? Do you just keep building until you just literally fill the country up? And you'll hear these, what I would describe as Muppets, on about how they drove through a certain place and there was all this spare land that could be turned into housing. Fellas like saying, look how bare Donegal is.
Yeah.
And how many houses would we fit in Donegal? There's an island here, it's called Tawin Island. It's just off Oranmore, and it's a beautiful like bird sanctuary. And I saw fellas on about how that could be, how many houses would you fit on this place, And this is like a real sanctuary for like birds that are, sort of have a hard time. Wildlife has a hard time as it is, as you probably know. I'll ask you about that in a little while. But yeah, it's just, it makes me laugh. This thing, just keep on building, keep on facilitating this massive growth. And my question is, why does it need to expand? Like, why do we need to have 15 million people in Ireland and growing? What's wrong with having 4 million people here,
Look, the Green Party leader, Eamon Ryan, was Minister for Housing a few years ago, wasn't he? And he was fully on board with this expand the population. I think he made a statement at some point that, mid-century Ireland would have 6-8 million people driven by immigration growth. And it's like, this is the very same party, same politicians that are pushing for carbon targets and, we need to get our carbon emissions down by an extra 1% to meet this goal, and this is vitally important, even though we're tiny percentage of the world population. But it's like, they're doing all this and they're playing around with all of this, and how can we get like a fraction of a percent of carbon off our emissions? And then it's like, plus import 150,000 people a year.
Yeah,
it's like...
It's such a contradiction.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, you'd think like someone that comes at politics from an environmentalist perspective would have this view of being, cultural preservationist, seeing something valuable in like the great ethnic diversity of Europe and so on. But yeah, when it comes to politics, it is just this totally like economistic view that even these people on the far left have.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating. I mean, you almost wonder like what happened to the true environmentalists. Like, 'cause even in like as late as the 90s in the US, one of the official green groups there was like heavily opposed to immigration because of population growth. And that was like a big plank of the environmental left right up to the 90s, was the problem is population growth.
Yeah.
All these worries about the population bomb and so on. And now it's like, let's bring the population bomb here, right?
It's
you
crazy.
almost wonder like what happened to the true environmentalists out there.
I know. Well, press pause on that. We'll get a coffee and we'll do another little ramble.
All right. We're here on the Latin Quarter. Bustling today, nice weather we've been having here in Ireland. And I will say, actually, I've been watching The Unbroken Man on YouTube recently. Funny, I ran into him. Big fan of his content. If he includes this in the video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, support The Unbroken Man on YouTube.
Somebody needs to give me back my camera. So we just got a coffee there from Coffee Work Press. One of the Coffee Work and Press. One of Galway's finest and most appreciated cafes. So it's nice. How do you find it? You got a latte, did you?
It's nice, yeah. I don't know, maybe they won't want our endorsement. I'll endorse it anyway.
I chose not to put the lid. I don't put a plastic lid on a coffee when I get it. It just, especially these milky coffees, it ruins it.
Yeah.
You get this lovely frothy coffee and you immediately then cover it with the lid and sip it through a little hole. It's not good. So you have to bite into it. It's like a pint of Guinness. You have to just get your lip over it, don't you?
Yeah. Gotta avoid the microplastics.
Yeah, at all costs. Yeah. That's kind of like this is like the Latin Quarter part of Galway.
Okay.
Which is the kind of cool culturally. Well, I don't know how to describe it really, but it's got a lot of the sort of pubs and the craft shops, nice little businesses. And then down here is the West End. It's the cool part of town. Mm-hmm. So is there
I lived down this direction. I used to live down past the Claddagh.
Yeah.
So I had a nice walk to the uni. Just along the canal.
Yeah.
It's a nice part of Galway. You've got Salt Hill just that way as well.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, Salt Hill is, I'd say one thing, Galway has changed quite a bit, but I still really like Salt Hill. And I find it to be, it's well preserved out there. Yeah. It's like the prom is nice. I'm always meeting people out there, and I have a habit anyway. I'll speak for myself on this, but being a bit negative about everything. But Salt Hill, other than the traffic kind of coming out of it, sometimes I kind of like it still.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how popular it is for tourism now, because that used to be one of the big spots for Irish people to kind of stay.
It was.
They call it like staycation. They call it in the US, but like Bundora and Salt Hill, this is where middle-class Ireland used to like pack up the family and then take them to B&B in Salt Hill for a weekend.
Yeah. Let's just look at that for a second. Isn't that just amazing? Look at that. Beautiful. The River Corrib. It's not as long as a lot of Irish rivers. It's only about 5 miles long. But it's got a ferocious flow of water coming through it. I mean, it's the body of the volume, should I say, of water flowing down there is colossal. It's probably as much as the Shannon. Mm-hmm. You can make a run for it, Keith, if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of this accommodation must be just used for Airbnbs now. Like even all these kind of iconic houses here, they're in a lot of picturesque views of Galway. These are included. It seems like they're almost all rental spaces for tourists now. I think Airbnb has really got a lot of people converting houses for that. And that's part of the housing problem as well. They're trying to bring in all sorts of stuff to discourage that. But it's like everything in Ireland is so expensive. It's such easy money to just flog these places out for tourists now and charge like a couple of €100 a night.
Yeah, so people are enjoying the sun here. This is the Claddagh on the right here, Spanish Arch area on the left. The famous view of the long walk there.
This is classic, like Galway.
Postcard Galway.
Student living as well. Come on the pier and drink cans on a sunny day.
Oh, it is.
Play music on the speakers.
And it gets a little bit messy at times. I'm not going to lie.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can even right now you can see
it's building.
The trail of cans.
Yeah, it's going to build up. I wouldn't like to have to walk along the bottom of the riverbed there in bare feet with all the cans and bottles that gets probably thrown into it. We can take a seat and I'll put a lav on you then, on both of us, so we can have a little, not a ramble, but a chat.
You're taking a seat like
over at the nets. Do you see that sort of wrecked boat over there?
Yeah, you're going to be running out of places to film soon, aren't you? You've pretty much covered Galway. You're going to have to start relocating around Ireland.
You see, the thing is with me, Keith, I'm sort of like, this is you can see other creators there. There's a few channels that have started up in Ireland, and they're just going balls out creating content, and they're getting views, comments, and they're doing good stuff. But you can just tell that it's their main thing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That they're just it's their main sort of focus. Whereas with me, I'm a full-time videographer and photographer. I've got I've got a son now to look after. I've got other stuff going on. I have another YouTube channel which I've totally neglected since I started this. So there's only so much time you can put into it, And what happens then, and you'll probably notice this yourself, you're creating videos and then you'll see like other guys uploading stuff, and if they get a lot of hits on a video, a lot of views, you go, oh God.
That formula 10 times.
Yeah. But you'll be saying to yourself, damn, I could have done that video. It's not good to copy, but don't let yourself be put off by, we'll say, the fact that others have, done the same thing.
Yeah, I wonder what you think. Do you think the big views you're getting on YouTube, you've gotten that 5-6 years ago? I definitely noticed the last few years, people have been hitting these talking points for a long time, obviously well before us. But I definitely noticed the last few years there seems to be kind of a demand for this stuff. And part of it is we have better content creators, you put such effort into the production and so on, and that obviously makes a huge difference. But I think part of it as well is people are just kind of seeking this stuff out, and there's a lot of word of mouth of people sharing these content creators and sharing these videos and talking points. And I don't know, you can kind of sense something rumbling, there is a vibe shift, as they say.
Yeah. In other words, Keith, what you're saying is it's gone mainstream. It really has.
Yeah, I don't know what I say mainstream. I mean, not in Ireland, I wouldn't say mainstream, but I think definitely the conversations are happening, Everyone is having these conversations. Maybe they won't have them in public, they won't have them at work, but it's in the WhatsApp group chats, it's between friends.
It is.
I'm noticing that in my kind of friend groups that were more apolitical, there's just a shift on this stuff now.
Oh boy, am I noticing it as well.
Yeah.
I'm noticing a full 180. Dolly, how are you? You're not running on the prom. How long more are you going to be here?
Until 7.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah.
You're here another while, in case we want another one. We got one up the road, but sure, we'll be back. All right. Yeah, she's lovely, that girl. She's a really good runner. I always see her out jogging the prom. She's fantastic. So this is an area I sometimes frequent here. This old wreck.
Lovely spot.
Yeah. I often find myself coming down here, just ending up at this wreck, and I don't know how they leave it here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, looking at this is a very old wreck.
The swans are used to getting fed bread constantly by people. Bread is literally the worst thing you could give swans.
Is that so?
That's it, yeah. It can be hard to, walking down through town as well. You can see, when you're doing something like this, you can see everyone kind of looking at you. Even though Galway is a kind of a liberal, cool place, you would like to think people are still kind of conservative, and when it comes to cameras and stuff, they're really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's weird. There is a natural conservatism to Irish people about. How would you describe it? Some Irish people would call it a begrudgingness. But the lad, if there's a lad with a camera or a lad making himself a social media star or something, Irish people still have a dislike and a distrust of that kind of thing.
Yeah, people do get kind of thick with when cameras are around.
Well, I don't know if you saw, I was in Birmingham recently, and I went to so I was testing out. I just got this Pocket Pro camera, so I was testing out the vlog style content. I ended up not posting the stuff of me vlogging. I just posted what I'd filmed in Alum. But that's the place now. If you're
Birmingham.
Yeah, Alum, which is 96%. Non-white. It's almost all Pakistani Muslims, but that's the place now. If you're walking through with a camera, commenting on things, you do feel like everyone is keeping an eye on you.
It's funny you say that. I was watching a video come up on Paris there lately, and this guy, an American vlogger with about 500,000 subscribers, right? Black guy, pretty cool, has a full YouTube channel about visiting places and stuff, not in any way a right wing or that type of kind, just a cool dude from America. But he went to Paris, and he went to the black area of Paris, and he was absolutely shitting himself. He was like, so this is where the drug dealers hanging out, I gotta be careful here. These guys they see my camera and all this. And he was just, he was really uncomfortable, like, and the area was the African area of Paris.
Yeah, I
So-
don't know if you've noticed, that's actually become an increasingly popular genre on YouTube of just people going to like the most multicultural areas of Europe and filming.
Yeah, it's crossed over, hasn't it?
Even like, Bald and Bankrupt, I think is the biggest. He's the biggest travel YouTuber on YouTube. He's like 5 million subscribers or something, and he always goes to these like post-Soviet places, super poor places in Eastern Europe. But he did one in I think it was the north of England. A very poor area of England, and it was like, it was worse than anything you see in any of his videos in Tajikistan or whatever.
We'll chat. I want to ask you about that stuff actually. So we'll just sit down here and we'll continue the chat with the other camera. Sure. Okay, let's roll with this. Roll it there, Roisin. Now, Gabo here.
How's this mic placement? You want me to?
Oh yeah, well done there. Well improvised, Keith, on that one. Well, this is going to look shit, but...
All the little things you don't think of with the filming is funny, because I was walking with one of these when I was trying to test out the vlog cam in Birmingham, and then I took it back, put it on the laptop, and I realised the entire time this was tipping off the microphone.
Oh,
there's like a million little things you don't think of.
Welcome to my world of pain. Yeah, you wouldn't believe the fuck-ups I made. Back in the day when I was learning video, I had to do like a podcast, an hour-long chat with some of the coaches with Connacht Rugby and some of the players at the time. And I had this device that I used to record audio with, and I had the mic, a big expensive mic plugged in, €800 mic, leading into this Tascam field recorder thing. And it ran out of batteries. And what happens was when this thing ran out of batteries, it killed the file. The file was gone.
The whole thing.
Really bad design, yeah. So it was gone. So I had to use the in-camera audio, which was brutal quality, like. And your one rang me. Why does it sound like it was recorded at the bottom of a swamp? She said. Anyway, that was back in the old days. Are we recording here? So guys, welcome back. I'm sitting down in the Claddagh here in Galway, the famous view, postcard Galway in the background. That lovely, multicoloured little walkway of the long walk. So I got my hair cut, Keith, especially for this occasion, because I know you're a well-groomed young lad. You're.
I got my hair cut
lad.
a couple of days ago, so I must have. I must have sensed there was an important media appearance coming.
Nice, yeah, exactly. Nice, sensible haircut there. I was beginning to look a bit like Kurt Russell in the movie Death Proof.
See, I'm too young for that reference.
No, I mean it's a 2007 movie. When were you
Never
born,
seen
actually?
it. 95.
Yeah, no, Death Proof. Directed by Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, I do know that movie. Yeah,
He's chasing after a few women.
Yeah.
Real authentic, lesser known Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, that's actually I think one of his better. I'm not a huge fan of Tarantino. I like that one. I like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That was the first Tarantino movie I really enjoyed.
I like him. You see, the thing is about me, I don't lose people through differences. People say that Tarantino's an anti-white and that there's anti-white stuff through his movies and stuff, and yeah, you could say that, but I still can appreciate his films. I don't.
Yeah,
get
I mean,
caught up.
there are people like that, and it's at a certain point you couldn't enjoy any media content if you're enough of a purist about that.
You have to just.
Everything has been left wing now for decades.
I know, like I mean, the same with De Niro and fuck Trump and all that kind of stuff. Like, I just see pictures of his family surfacing lately. That was funny. But when I see De Niro movie coming on, like Taxi Driver or The Deer Hunter, which is one of his great movies that's kind of lesser known. This is only backup, by the way, so don't worry too much about this. But I can still appreciate them. Or The Irishman, where he's kicking the shit out of some guy in the ground. He's got the little dinosaur arms like this. He's anti-Trump or whatever, and he's on about moving. But I watch old movies. I can watch new movies. I still enjoy it. Predator, Schwarzenegger comes on the TV. I'm going to drop what I'm doing. It's one of my favourite movies. I know he was like, Schwarzenegger was like, screw your freedom and all that so yeah, anyway, that's me. So
yeah, Scorsese, actually, I like The Irishman, actually. Scorsese is like one of the few directors. He's still making stuff. I mean, I don't know if you call it right wing, but like it's definitely, he's not keeping up with the whole leftist zeitgeist.
The message. I know he's like those old films, Goodfellas, Casino, those old 90s. I'll watch an old film now and I'll nearly feel like I just go, bring me back to that era. Even like, to mention Tarantino again, like Jackie Brown, came out like in 96, 97 or whatever. another movie that came out that era, The Fifth Element. I just love like even 90s films now. Like the 90s was a completely different era to now. It's just, even Galway, it's just so different.
Yeah, I
to
mean,
what it was.
film is really I used to work in the cinema. We kind of watched the death of film in the last 10 years. Like, especially, I think it got worse during COVID, but if you just look back in the last like 10, 15 years, the amount of like original releases is smaller and smaller, to the point where the only thing the studios will take a risk on now is, you know, a superhero, something from a popular book that they know people are going to watch, remake, sequel. And that's basically everything now. And even if you look at like if you start looking at like the kind of Best Picture Oscar winners, you see increasingly it's like non-American movies. You had the one, Parasite, was Korea. You have one of the big movies last year that was surprisingly good was Japan did a Godzilla movie. Oh yeah, yeah. And the budget was only like $8-10 million. It was like one of the best things made last year.
Really, yeah.
Because it's like the only original stuff is kind of coming from outside the Hollywood bubble now, because there's so little they'll take risks on, you know.
It's all the message though, isn't it? It's always got the same kind of message.
There's a way to do a message that's artistic and that can still make good cinema. But now it's so preachy that it's almost like kind of self-parody. Like, I think the perfect example was, I don't know if you saw that one that was on Netflix. I think it was called Don't Look Up, with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
And he was playing like a scientist, and it was obviously, it was an allegory for climate change and how we're not listening to the scientists on that. But in a weird way, like, I watched that and I was almost wondering, like, is this intended to parody this?
Yeah.
But it wasn't. But that was the vibe, because it was so like self-righteous and preachy, and it's like, oh, if you don't listen to the scientists and the world is literally ending and all of this kind of thing. And it was so like over the top that, you know, they've almost become so kind of preachy and like conservative in controlling the message. Yeah. That when they try and make art to promote that, it just becomes kind of a self-parody.
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah.
Even like the language policing, you know, like so much of the discourse recently online has been, you know, the left trying to police what people can say and what kind of words are acceptable, and if it's acceptable to cancel someone for saying a word. And again, it's like the right, which traditionally was like, you know, conservative values, respectability, this kind of thing. Now the right is the transgressive side. That's putting out the stuff that's making like the older generation upset and trying to police speech norms. So it's like a total inversion in the last few years.
There is, like, and even on Facebook now, the stuff I'm seeing on Instagram, like these platforms that would normally, I think there's a big change. It's loosened up a bit, I think. And there's pages there that are sharing memes about certain things. I won't go into too much detail. And I'm going like, fucking hell. And the responses they're getting and stuff, I'm going, wow, there's a bit of a change. And so even like we chatted briefly about like Michael McCarthy, you know, think about this, like on Instagram. Now Instagram was always like, it started out as a bit of a kind of a hipster platform almost, whatever, and it you know, it was very influencer based. You know, people putting the kind of cool stuff on there. And then, like, I know people that have worked their asses off on Instagram, you know, doing comedy pages and all that, trying to turn it into a business. And after maybe almost, like, we'll say a decade, they might have 100,000 followers. This Michael McCarthy, think about this guy, comes out of nowhere. All of a sudden, I'm getting people sending me, you know, these videos back to back. Another one's coming in. Or he's sitting, black background, pair of headphones on with a fairly strong kind of, is it a Galway accent he has? I'm still trying to decipher. West of Ireland accent, right? But lovely guy. It's straight up stuff. He's not really doing anything crazy, but it's well put together, and he's on point. Crazy interaction. I mean, thousands of comments on his uploads.
Yeah, I mean, that's the weird dynamic now, is like you can go viral as like a right-wing content creator, just observing what's happening, just observing things that have become normal in our society and just kind of raising an eyebrow at it, or just a snide comment. And it's like, I think for the older generation, like, I think they've kind of forgotten how much goes into that worldview, that kind of boomer sort of basic leftism or liberalism. And, you know, they were raised on so much media, they were watching the same television, the same movies that inculcated this worldview. And, you know, the whole narrative of basically World War II happened, and then there was this never-ending progress, and Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, and then we became multicultural and everything was great.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think they forget that, like, for our generation, well, like, we haven't gotten these narratives. We haven't seen this story, and there's, like I said, it's this kind of conservative force where there's all of these taboos, there's all of these things you can't really say, can't really discuss, and now you have a generation that doesn't really understand why. Like, they never experienced this transition. And it's just kind of begging for someone to be transgressive, you know, like you just need to push it and the whole thing falls over. And that's kind of the vibe you're seeing with Gen Z now, is like, even if they're not educated on some of these taboo topics, it's like they're gonna say the most trollish, outlandish thing anyway, because it's just so easy to garner a reaction with that.
But yeah, I hear what you're saying, but another point is that, like, you know, the topic is fucking huge. Yeah. Like, you know, a video there will say, I saw that guy Michael post lately, you know, in Portugal or somewhere, Lisbon, crowds of Africans shoving themselves onto a train or bus or something, right? 9,000-10,000 comments or something. So, like, you know, that's that level of interaction, you know, and even with other videos, the creators on YouTube, like Sargon, you know, Carl Benjamin, all these different people, I'm not seeing this viewership and this traffic on any other we'll say a subject, unless it's like super entertainment stuff, we'll say. But it's like, okay, they like to label, you know, especially in Ireland, you know, that it's only a certain group that are opposing, you know, the mass migration thing. But it's like the amount of people consuming this content, it's
taken over the right now. I mean, people that are new to this might not realize how much things have shifted, but because now you go online and you have these huge content creators with millions of subscribers, like people like Matt Walsh, Sargon you mentioned, all of these kinds of people are making these basic sort of nationalist talking points, like every other people can have a country, Japan for the Japanese, you know, Palestine for the Palestinians, why doesn't this apply to Europeans? But it's like 7, 8 years ago, people that were saying this were like banned off everything. Yeah. Like that was like on the furthest corner of the internet, like on dark forums and stuff. And that is like pretty much consensus on the right now, at least in the US. It's going to spread here eventually.
It just, I can't get my head around it, like the way it works. Like this, you know, sort of thing with forcing Ireland to be multicultural, and this kind of, obviously coming from our government and the media, that multiculturalism is the best thing for Ireland. And you know, this small little unique island with the low population up in the Atlantic, how we need to replace our population with the colossuses of countries with, I mean, we're talking crazy population growths. India, you know, I've spoken about it a few times, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. Oh, if we didn't have them, sure, our health system would be screwed. Thank God they're working here in the hospitals and all that, or we'd be in dire trouble. You know, this kind of, I just can't understand what's so wrong with us wanting, you know, just to maintain Ireland as its own type of country. Because let's be honest, we're kind of running out of time now, and it's becoming clearly evident. I'm watching a tern diving for fish in the background here. Actually, that was a gull. No, sorry, I'm distracted. Like you looking at the boats, I'm looking at the gulls. But I just, and people say to me, like, oh God, you're so brave putting your face on camera and all this, like as if I should be ashamed of this view. Like, I love Ireland, and I remember, I'm a good bit older than you are. I remember living through the 80s and the 90s, and they'd love to think that certain people in Ireland love to think that the 80s was a hellhole in Ireland, but it was actually a lovely place. The 90s was class. The 90s was underrated. I have such fond memories of that decade, but yeah, so we're going to be, it's becoming clearly evident now that, well, not even, you know, Tucker Carlson said there won't be an Ireland in 100 years. 2050, which is 25 years, a quarter of a century, I reckon it's going to be vastly different. It's not going to be a European country, really, is it? Let's be honest.
No, that's the direction it's heading in. I mean, the thing with Ireland is we're never given a narrative of why this is going to happen here. You know, like in the US, whether they're correct or not, there is this narrative of, you know, this was a nation of immigrants. This developed over a century, right? You know, sending your huddled masses and slowly developed this narrative and expanded the immigration system. And of course, in the UK, they have all of this kind of multicultural mythology as well about the the SS Windrush and this post-war generation that came here to rebuild Britain and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And of course it's nonsense, but I mean, most other European countries, they have some kind of narrative about, well, we're guilty of colonialism, etc., etc. Here, there wasn't anything like that. I mean, it was just like, it was kind of an overnight thing where our politicians were like, yeah, you know, this is a multicultural Ireland now. There is no such thing as the ethnic Irish.
Well, you're missing a point there, Keith. You're missing that whole... Sure, the Irish were accepted and welcomed in every corner of the globe.
Yeah, yeah.
And now it's our turn to do the same to the world. But when they say every corner of the globe, really what they mean is England, right? Certain parts of England.
Yeah.
The east coast of North America, New York and Boston, we'll say mostly. Australia, right? Fuck all else. That's every corner of the globe. Can you name other places?
No, I mean, yeah, it's such a weird narrative because, I mean, for one, right, the migration to England, well, against our will, we were part of the Union, right? So technically that wasn't even immigration.
It wasn't.
That was movement within the Union, right?
Yeah, and even to the States as well.
Yeah, I mean, the States, I mean, one of the founding fathers there, I think his second name was Carroll, but there were Irishmen that were part of the foundation there. Even one of the proposed flags for the US when it was first going to be independent was a flag of the different British Isles countries and Ireland included on there as well. And in Australia, I mean, Australia's identity ethnically, like what is an Australian? It's a Anglo-Celtic identity.
Yeah,
it's English and Irish people, so they're the founders.
Yeah.
But you take, you know, 3 countries, which that's your immigration, like other northwestern European peoples that we're intermingling with. We're going there because we're useful for their economic system, or because we're part of the same political union, and that's the justification for, you know, infinity South Asians and Africans to migrate to Ireland.
It's mad, like, and you know, I'm a self-employed person now for half my life since I'm in my mid-20s. But you know, if I went abroad, I could probably just work for myself, set up a thing. But I couldn't get into Australia or America. I couldn't get a visa. Like, you know, I wouldn't be allowed. You know what I mean? So the Irish were welcomed everywhere, but you can't go anywhere now as a 50-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing, and we would never expect that a country has an obligation to let you in as an immigrant, right? I mean, I remember when Australia tightened their immigration laws a few years back when there was floods of Irish immigrants going there after the crash. I mean, I don't think any Irish person was saying this is a terrible crime against humanity that Australia is enforcing some labour laws and not taking as many Irish builders, you know?
Yeah, I know. And I remember that time when was it the mayor, who was it, Prime Minister of Australia or something, just mentioned Irish people being a bit rowdy, bit out of order, and they needed to cop on and stuff, you know. I was like, yeah,
most Irish people were like, yeah, you know, that's fair enough.
Yeah, you see, you know, we can take a bit of criticism too, you know, but just don't criticize certain you know, immigrants. So Keith, I put up a picture there of you in Ayr Square with Michael. Sorry, there's a YouTube video playing here. And I just said, I might, if I was to bump into this guy, is anybody any interesting questions? And he says, somebody said they see that you have a presence again on this platform on YouTube. You're unfortunately taken down. Just, I think probably the timing as well. I don't know if you'd be taken down today. Without going into too much detail, are you going to come back or what?
It was actually, the timing was kind of weird, really, because I survived for years through what I'd say was the worst of the censorship. Like, I think 2019 to 22
It's kind of bad.
That was when it was really bad, and I survived through all that. My content never broke the terms of service, in fairness. I kept it fairly above board, or maybe a little esoteric for the censors. But I just got a Media Matters hit piece written about me. And like YouTube, I mean, they're not going to go and watch all my videos and see if I'm whatever they're saying I am. So it's like, if an organization that's big enough says take this guy down, YouTube will do it, unfortunately. And that's just how it goes, which is, I mean, I think it's insane, because if you think about it, I had 70,000 subscribers on YouTube.
God.
And like for Ireland, I mean, that's a big audience.
Yeah,
you know, so I'm a pretty big independent voice or journalist or whatever in Ireland. So for this company in the US, that's like a partisan, left-wing, Democrat-affiliated organization, literally had startup capital from George Soros. For them to be able to just take off independent voices in countries like Ireland, I mean, that's they talk about interference, foreign interference in elections and democracy. I mean, what is that? Like, this Democrat-affiliated organization in the US is getting Irish creators banned.
Yeah. I just think it was just censorship was very bad for a while. There's other guys I saw. I won't mention names in case, but they were very, very entertaining. Taken down, set up their own platforms. Kind of comedian guys, you might know who I'm on about. But like on the same subject, But I think hopefully there's a bit of a shift back. But that was that person said anyway. And tell me about the Ban the ADL thing.
Oh, that was, when was that now? I guess that's September 23. When I got back on the platform on Twitter X when Elon Musk took over. And that was around the period where there was stories coming out that the head of the Anti-Defamation League, Jonathan Greenblatt, was having meetings with the CEO of Twitter. Yeah. And after Musk took over Twitter in 2022, the ADL organised an advertising boycott.
Keep going if you want, I'm just checking here.
Yeah, the ADL organised an advertising boycott that cost Twitter 50% of its US ad revenue, according to Elon Musk. Yeah. And that was a big story of the censorship in that period, because they first went after Facebook in 2020 after the George Floyd riots. And they kind of saw that as an opportunity to clamp down on this stuff, because kind of what they went after was not even directly related to Floyd. I mean, I'm not going to mention the specific thing, because probably even saying it on YouTube would get your video in trouble. But they said, Facebook needs to totally change its terms of service. And in fairness, Zuckerberg, I guess he used to be a bit more principled. He refused. And they brought all of these different companies together. I think they put out an advert in the LA Times and got all of these like Silicon Valley-based companies to do this advertising boycott on Facebook. And I think took 10 to 12% off Facebook's stock price. And basically, with this kind of financial terrorism, forced Facebook to totally change its terms of service and to ban people the ADL didn't like. And then they did the same thing with Twitter. So Ban the ADL was in this climate of everyone wanting a free speech Twitter. Yeah. People voted on Elon Musk's polls that any speech that's legal should be on the platform. Okay. And that was the consensus. And then it's like, well, the ADL is coming in again. And we're starting to see how censorship works, where you have a small number of these civil society organizations that use their influence to engage in this financial pressure to enforce these speech standards. And so we said, no, let's the majority reject this. Hashtag Ban the ADL was the tag I started, because I said, well, against Twitter's own terms of service, you can't use the platform to try and make it financially unviable. And the purpose of the ADL page on Twitter right now is to organise an advertising boycott. So how about instead of the ADL deciding who gets a voice on free speech, we just ban the ADL? And to my surprise, I mean, it went huge. There was 100,000 posts the first night on that. Wow. Elon Musk ended up engaging with it. It did start this broader conversation. A lot of more mainstream people, Stephen Miller posted hashtag Ban the ADL. Wow. Yeah. Even Ben Shapiro eventually endorsed it. So it became this kind of cross-sectional thing. Yeah. And, it may have actually led to some kind of relenting on their behalf. They would never admit that. I think Greenback just came out and called me called me some nasty names. Wow. But Musk hinted that he'd had some kind of agreement with Greenblatt after that they were going to go more after the left. And this was around the same time October 7th happened, not long after. And I think since then there's been kind of a shift. They went after TikTok a lot more. I think what they realized is that it's much more a problem for that kind of lobby, that you have all of these young people now. And actually, this is a big problem for them, is a lot of young people in the West now are non-white. And they're not fond of Israel, and the ADL is a pro-Israel Zionist organization. And they're starting to realize, we've been going so hard after conservatives, and they even lobbied for Trump being banned and so on. And now they're realizing we've been importing these people by the millions. They're not very fond of Israel. And they see it as this like Western colonial project. And so I think that's maybe part of the reason for the let up in censorship a little bit, is they're much more concerned about the extreme left views of people on platforms like TikTok now, but also just a broader vibe shift. I mean, I don't know if you saw Mark Zuckerberg did that interview on Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Talking about the decision to relent on the censorship, which very conveniently came as soon as Trump was elected.
Yeah, oh boy.
So obviously there's a bit of fear there of what a Trump administration might do. Someone suggested to me as well, it may even be that they're training their AI and they want a lot of different voices on their platforms. I don't think that's it. I think there is just an overall vibe shift. I think the censorship for a time there was so crazy. You know, like to the point where you couldn't say that COVID was potentially a lab leak. That would get you banned on YouTube, and people were losing.
Imagine that, yeah.
People were losing YouTube channels with 500,000, 1 million subscribers. That was their whole livelihood for things that are discussed and accepted by the mainstream now. And it was leading to this situation. You know, people were moving to Substack. They were moving to these other platforms. They were kind of losing control of the conversation, and that it was going off the mainstream platforms. And in a sense, it's probably better for them to have it all in one centralized place. But now I think the cat's out of the bag. I think there was so much testing with censorship in those years that a lot of people have figured out ways to get around it with the short clipping and creating their own kind of cultish followings. And so I do think there's kind of an acceptance now, like we're going to have to live with. There's going to be far-right people online. There's going to be immigration restrictions. There's going to be conspiracy theorists.
I feel like the kind of the left now on this censorship and stuff. I feel like even with that case recently, Shiloh, was it? Mm-hmm. I know there was the Carmelo Anthony GoFundMe. You know, that poor boy lad that was murdered, and then the Shiloh Hendricks or something. Is that her name?
Yeah, that's her name.
You know, it was indicative of a kind of a change. Vibe shift and stuff. But I think, my train of thought is slipping a little bit here. I was about to say something else. But, I hear you on that. And just on the Musk thing, was it just that Musk was sort of endorsing? Was there anything else? Because I remember vaguely now, forgive me for not having my research on point. We did say this was going to be a casual chat. But was there anything else Musk was endorsing that you remember? He
did. The first time he interacted with me was when I posted about the Irish hate speech legislation.
Yeah.
Which.
Oh yeah, of course.
I went through the bill, and the most egregious part of that bill was a lot of European countries unfortunately have hate speech laws, and that's in the news again now this week because the EU has actually said. I don't know if you saw this. The EU is going to start potentially.
I saw that.
Punishing Ireland and
Clamping
Finland.
Down. Yeah.
For not having proper hate speech laws. So it's very frustrating. You see all of the different angles that the pressure for this stuff comes from. But yeah, they were trying to pass this in 2023 around the time I came back on Twitter. But one of the most egregious parts of that law was you could go to jail for possessing hateful materials on a device, even if you had no intent to distribute it. So you have a meme. You have some
WhatsApp
offensive image on your phone. Yes, stuff gets saved automatically if they're posted in chats. You potentially go into jail for that. He boosted that. A number of people did. I think, again, the Irish government sometimes just kind of shoots itself in the foot with how far it goes for some of this stuff. Because if it just did a milder law, and they could have even beefed it up later. But they had to go all out and say, no, we're not just going to have hate speech laws. We're going to have like the worst hate speech laws in Europe.
Yeah.
And it was so outrageous that it just created all of this bad PR for them. And of course, that led to a huge campaign from the public in terms of contacting TDs, senators.
Yeah.
Then you saw how this happens, coming up to an election. You start seeing individual government TDs were breaking with this. I think Willie O'D came out against it. Senators were starting to scrutinise this more. And eventually the government dropped it. They passed the hate crime law, but they dropped the hate speech aspect.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a huge victory, because you look at all of the people in the UK that go to jail now for speech violations. I think the number that's been given is like 10,000 arrests a year.
Even the cost of it, the resources it uses up. Surely they have bigger fish to fry. Look at what's going on. You won't see the same effort being put into investigating, like we'll say, the grooming gang scandal or something like that. It's like as if they hold the white Westerners, white British people, whatever, to a much higher standard almost.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't know if you saw this week. Keir Starmer was in India signing a trade agreement.
Yeah.
And I've never seen anything like this. Part of the trade agreement was that Indians that work in the UK won't have to pay national insurance.
I saw that. I saw that.
So you're literally going to have a two-tier tax system where if you're a native, you're paying more. And actually, because these people are going to be using services and they're paying less tax, part of your tax is actually subsidising them. So in a way, you're going to be paying more tax because you have to subsidise this extra population. I've never seen anything like this where we're now going to have our leaders signing agreements to give preferential treatment to their people. And this is the kind of, because sometimes people will say like, the problem is just, it's just like Islam and coming into the country and, the non-Islamic immigrants are fine or something. But this is where you see like the nepotism involved where like the Indian leader has that power to use Indians in the UK as a bargaining chip. And we're now getting, a two-tier system that is taxing natives in this way. It's
nuts. And did you see in India there, that awful attack in Kashmir, on the tourists and, I think 30 men were shot like in front of their families, 30 Hindis or whatever. They were asked by the Pakistani version of ISIS or whatever, correct me if I'm wrong, what religion, and then bang. And then the Indian government, said that Pakistani Muslims must leave India, no more visas, all this kind of stuff. A real sort of strict, follow-up or retaliation against it, whereas over here it's like, don't look back in anger. Oh, no, it's, don't be like that. This kind of, I don't know, it's it's a different way of working over there, and you'll see with immigration as well, and people coming into Poland. I saw some guy had posted a video there of, a fence being cut and there was the immigrants crawling through and straight away the Polish army were down on top of them. Whereas over here it's like, you're never getting your country back. Do you ever see those videos? With the waving around the Irish passports? I don't know what it is. We're just committing suicide by this stuff we're doing. It's clown world. Yeah,
I mean, the crazy thing is as well, like this conflict between India and Pakistan, it's like, how would that ever affect anyone here? But I've seen people have been writing about this recently, that it's potentially a national security threat to Britain because there's so many Indian and Pakistani communities in the UK that you could potentially have wide-scale ethnic violence between these communities.
Well, this is it. Yeah, they'll bring their wars to the countries, our countries. Look at the amount of Palestinian stuff even in Ireland, the unrest.
It's happened before in the UK. It doesn't get reported on much. I was actually surprised when I went looking into. When I was in Birmingham, I was looking into it, actually, the history, that there's been all these kinds of ethnic conflicts that they go on, they don't really get reported on. Maybe if they're on the news, you hear there was riots or ethnic tensions or something. Yeah. But I mean, at one point there was literally like a race war in Birmingham where there was an allegation that the Pakistani community in Birmingham had abused a girl that was a member of a black community in Birmingham. And however it kicked off, one community attacked another. And, there was nights of ethnic violence, rioting, people were killed. And this was literally like, two non-white races in the second city in the UK in a race war with the British police having to try and police this and restore order. It doesn't take much. I mean, that was like 20 years ago. You just imagine, well, what happens when you have 10 times more migrants, when you have even more ghettoized communies?
You see, this is the thing, and I've said this several times, how the left, they love to think that it's, the far right or whatever, they're opposing this, mass immigration, multiculturalism and all that it's only a certain section of society, white Irish, boyos or whatever, but it's like, what do the East Europeans think of, that were here 20 years ago? What do they think now when they see inner city Dublin? And what do Africans think of Pakistanis and Muslims and stuff? Oh, lovely, I've East Europeans one side of me, I've Muslims the other side, and there's Indians across the road and the Nigerians. Oh, great, we're all buddies. As long as there's none of those far right guys around, we're grand. I don't think it works like that though, really.
Well, there was a funny story that was going around, I think it was pretty recently. Just the headline was funny because it was talking about there there was complaints coming from people in the direct provision centres, which is the, officially refugee asylum seeker, but, mostly illegal immigrants. But the complaint coming was that these people had unfair treatment because it said they were being put together with incompatible cultures, people from incompatible backgrounds, and this was creating tension and conflict between them. And it's like, so you're telling me like diversity and bringing people of different ethnic backgrounds together is unfair for these people and creates tension and conflict? Well, why are you doing that to the entire country then? It's not working out in the direct provision centres, but it's going to work out for...
Yeah, well, this is it. Look what the North African countries think of each other. Like, and they're all Muslim countries, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria. Do they get on? Are they friends? They're all Muslim North African countries? I don't think so. Do you know what I mean? You can't even get across the border.
I mean, the worst ethnic violence in the 90s, the worst conflict in Europe since the Second World War was breakup of Yugoslavia. Yeah. And Croats and Serbs and Bosnians. And it's like the difference between them biologically is... insane, negligible. Like,
they're completely
like Croats. It's like Croats are Catholic, Serbs are Orthodox. There's very slight differences in the language, but they basically speak the same language.
Yeah, and look at the difference.
Over those slight differences, I mean, the amount of ethnic cleansing, conflict, genocide, and people will even look to Northern Ireland and. You look at the history of the Troubles there and how difficult that was to manage and to negotiate a peace process, and the deep divisions that are still there.
And yet we think we can welcome all these people from the opposite ends of the world and it'll all be cushy.
Like, I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a guy who's been kind of doing the rounds lately, media-wise, called Davit Betz.
No.
He's a professor in the UK. He's in King's College, London. And
I might know him to see now, but the name, I bet you I know him to see. But
he's an expert on Civil War.
I know the guy. I know the guy. Yeah, he went big on a few videos lately, yeah?
Yeah. And he has this is not some guy who's like an outsider or some like political person or something. This is a guy who's advised the British government. Yeah. He's worked for advising different national militaries and how to manage conflicts, especially places like Iraq, like different sectarian divisions. But he's been doing the rounds recently because he came out and predicted that Britain is heading for civil war.
I saw that.
And if you listen to his reasoning, because again, this is someone that's actually just taken a sociological view. I don't think he has any strong partisan political views or anything, but he's just taking a sociological view and saying, well, the factors I look for leading to civil conflict, the number one thing is the breakdown of social capital, and basically multiculturalism has completely eroded and destroyed that to the point that there isn't going to be a coherent country, and inevitably it's going to turn into conflict. And you just look at that and it's like, again, this is someone that's just taken an objective sociological view. And I've always believed if you take that view, you come to the conclusion that this is always the path diversity goes down. There's always some kind of either separation, some kind of, in the north, there's a very kind of tenuous power sharing approach, but the conflict is never far away, but inevitably it leads to conflict. But I mean, this is basically a consensus sociologically. Sociology is very left-wing, but I studied sociology in university, and it's all of the memes about the kind of Marxist brainwashing from the professors are true, and then some. But at the same time, there was a big study done in 2019 by a Danish university that put together all of the studies ever done on social trust and diversity, and it found that in pretty much every one of these studies that there's a remarkable correlation between the more diversity you have, the more breakdown in social trust, social capital, and at a certain point, that turns into outright conflict, that turns kinetic. Well, and so we have this as basically a consensus. It's there in the data. And that's just not a factor in how people decide policy. That's just the most insane thing ever to me. Yeah.
It's mad.
And there's no explanation. If we were even getting an explanation, okay, this is broken down in the UK, this has been a failure. So what is Ireland going to do that's going to make our multicultural project different from the UK? And we're nicer, we're more welcoming, so it's going to
Yeah.
work here. I mean, that seems to be basically it.
You see, the Irish, Keith, we always thought we were kind of different.
Yeah.
We're cool. Sure, nobody has anything against the Irish.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Phil Lynott and Paul McGrath, you know what I mean? Aren't they cool? And, for some reason, nobody ever seems to mention Samantha Mumba. I thought she was pretty cool, pretty attractive. She doesn't get enough credit at all. I don't
what's
remember.
funny about that? Phil Lynott, he was born in England.
Yeah.
So surely he's English then, right? If you're just born wherever you're born, right?
Oh yeah, you see, there you go. I knew his son, and when I knew his son, he used to work in the GPO bar. It was called the Drum, and I did a few gigs in there DJing, and he was the nicest guy, big tall guy, as tall as probably in between me and you, about 6'3", and. He was in there behind the bar, and I used to help, when you'd set up the decks and stuff. And I remember hearing on Jerry Ryan that Phil Lynott had a son. Jerry Ryan interviewed him and all this, and he was saying how he was out at Leisureland trying to sneak in. Little did he know that it was his dad on stage, Thin Lizzy playing back in, they would say, the very early 80s. Little did he know that was his dad on stage, and he only found out I think it was 2005 or 6. He found out shortly before Jerry Ryan died, actually.
Yeah.
So I knew your man, and the next, but I didn't know. I only heard on the radio. My mother was on about. Oh, there he is. My mother said on the front of the newspaper there, and there was your man. Oh, I said, geez, I know that guy. From the guy who works in the town. Anyway, I'm going into a bit of too much detail here, but yeah, we thought we thought we'd all get on. You see, we thought we'd be cool, and that when people move here, sure, they'll all want to be Irish. Being Irish is cool. Sure, everyone is Irish. But now what's happening is we're sort of just ending up a bit like England and even like America. We're kind of only white people at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? And there's this barrier.
And the media plays into that as well.
And there's a bit of a class thing, There's a bit of a class thing. Being honest now, a lot of the menial jobs, you'll see the lads in the Deliveroo bikes, those godforsaken mountain bikes, big fat tractor tires on them. An awful lot of them guys aren't European guys, let's be honest.
Yeah.
A lot of workers now, nearly every shop you go into now, a lot of the menial jobs in gas stations,
the service
Supermax.
staff.
Supermax beside me in Oranmore and Merlin Park.
All
I do
Indians.
like the odd Supermax. It's all
Indians.
Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis.
Same
whatever.
on the one on Air Square.
Yeah, it's just all.
Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it? So I've received a few people on the left, I suppose, saying that when you oppose, you wouldn't have a problem with immigration if it was, if it wasn't brown people. You've just got a problem with brown people, the brown invasion. I do think that it's a shame that these countries with such a huge population, with their own countries, I do think it's a shame to have to make Ireland their country as well. Because that is, I firmly believe that is what's going to happen. I do think that Ireland eventually will be primarily an non-white country. If that's seen as a racist thing to say, fair enough, whatever. But another thing I'd like to say, I've said already that like people from India and stuff, like generally, like I have a movie that went viral in India, believe it or not. A horror movie, it's got millions of views.
Big in India.
I'm big in, yeah. So I've had loads of conversations on the internet with Indian people messaging me and stuff, and I like a lot of traits to Indian people. There's a bit of fraud going on the phone. If I'm going to be honest, a lot of phone calls I've got trying to, for iPhones that I apparently just purchased, even though I have a new iPhone. Apparently I just bought a new one and I need to pay for it now. But a lot of those tend to be Indian people. There is fraud. We've seen Nick Delahunty, doing a little bit of investigative stuff on iPass centres and all that. But one thing I will say is I don't really care where the people are coming in from. It's just we happen to be getting a big section of South Asians, big amount into Ireland. It's a vastly grown part of our population now, but I don't favour, it's not a race thing for me. When I go to the playground now with my young lad, and I hear East European, Ukrainian, Russian or whatever spoken, because what happens is when you have a young lad, and they're learning. And I can remember when I was a kid, when you're a kid, you're like a sponge to other kids. You pick up, especially slightly older other kids, like a 3-year-old will see a 5-year-old and they'll be magnetized towards them. So when your young fella hears other kids and they're maybe a year or two older, but they're all speaking different languages, there's something weird, something in me goes, this isn't making me comfortable. Because you know that your child isn't learning like they would if they were surrounded by their own. Sorry to say it, but I think that is a fact. They're hearing all different languages. The Muslim kids are over there, the East European kids are here, the African kids are here. They're all Africans, in fairness, mostly in Ireland, they're speaking English, right? So, but there's a lot of different languages, and I don't know what it is. I just think it's, from my perspective, you've no kids yourself, but that really makes you think. When you're down Salt Hill and you're down at the Strand and you hear a multitude of different languages, because that often happens where English is just another spoken language now. Yeah. Do you notice anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, I look back, like, when I was a kid, I mean, growing up in rural Ireland, it was kind of idyllic for me. And I mean, I think a big part of it is there is such a, I mean, there was when I was growing up still such a community sense in rural Ireland. And you know, when you're a kid, there's just a feeling of
trust.
It's the trust and the familiarity, and the belonging. And I just can't imagine growing up now in a super multicultural area and having that. They are missing something. It's tragic, and it's funny all of the leftist memes about like no one is born discriminatory or any of this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there was one Protestant in our class, and we thought that was, that kind of had our guard up. You know, kids are very sensitive to this kind of thing. But I think what she said is true as well. Like, there is this view Irish people have that's very naive, that because we're nice, because we're the good ones, you know, the immigrants here will have a much different attitude to us. And I think that's been proven to be completely wrong. Yeah. And the media is to blame for a lot of that. I mean, you know, people grow up on the diet of Hollywood movies, and RTE media is very focused on, you know, we get this picture of like America as a racist country, Brexit in the UK, and so much of the kind of official Ireland chattering class for years there was this kind of patting ourselves on the back that we don't have a Brexit, we don't have a populist movement, we don't have a Nigel Farage. And I think it has given people this view that, like, maybe multiculturalism has problems in the UK, maybe there are racial tensions in America, but that's basically because there's all of these white racists that are hanging on and that are so mean to these new groups. And they're just totally unaware of the enmity that exists, that really you see on social media. I mean, if you're on social media, it won't be long before you see a lot of these people that just have extreme hate for white people, and Irish people get no special exemption for that. You know, I've seen in the last few years, you know, I've seen these people blaming Ireland for colonialism. I've seen them saying that we're benefiting from white privilege, that even if we didn't partake in it, that the fact that we have a better economy than outside Europe means we're complicit. I mean, that's another thing. It's not a rational thing, you know? Yeah,
we have this guilt trip ourselves now that we're kind of we're wealthier and we have it good, you know? Yeah. And yet we're going around, we're as poor as church mice, you know? Yeah. We can't afford, you know, they're telling us we're a wealthy country, but it's not really filtering down to the people. You know, it's a tough country to live in. I don't think other countries are that much better off. People, you know, I was in Portugal and Spain for a month last year, this time, and they have their problems as well. But I don't know. I hear what you're saying.
I think there's a generational disconnect there as well. In that, if you look at who's running our media, our politics, Desmond Fennell, Irish writer, used to call them the state class. And say it was, you know, the D4 South Dublin class. But it is this kind of boomer and like older Gen X group of people in urban Ireland that really did benefit from the economic growth periods. They have property, and property has exploded in value. It's made them very, very wealthy asset-wise.
And they've no outgoings. They've no bills, big fucking massive mortgages like the rest of us.
And they do benefit from immigration. You know, this is the thing. I think a lot of times, like, populists, when they're talking about the problems of immigration, and it's like, you know, everyone is suffering. How can the government not see this? How is everyone not rising up against this? But you do forget, you know, property prices are skyrocketing. Well, if you own a couple of houses, that's not a bad thing, right? That's making you tremendously wealthy. And okay, wages are being kept down, but well, if you're not having to go out and earn a wage, it's, you know, it's not really a big problem. I think there's a disconnect there in that they don't realize on paper, we have a very strong economy. You know, GDP figures, GNP figures, and that's very much the multinational companies that are coming here exporting. Because I mean, GDP is just a measure of what's changing hands in a country.
Yeah.
It doesn't really test anything. But if you look at other measures like, you know, there's different measures you can use to tell what do people actually have wealth-wise for spending. And if you look at like how much people have left to spend after their essentials and so on, Ireland ranks very low in Europe.
It does, yeah.
And there's a lot of these different measures that actually test, you know, how much money do people have to spend, how much economic freedom do they have, that it's very low. And that's not even accounting for the huge generational disconnect where, okay, we've a lot of wealth. We've a lot of people in their 60s, 70s that have a couple of houses and have huge asset wealth. And like you said, have no debt.
Rat. Did you see it?
No.
There's a rat walked down there.
Oh yeah?
Sorry, yeah. Go ahead, yeah.
Hopefully he doesn't
he just walked right out by my camera there.
Oh, maybe you'll catch him.
Yeah.
That happened on another one of your videos as well.
Yeah,
They're following you. They're following you around the city.
I was playing pitch and putt last night, and a fox was hanging around me.
Interesting.
He was looking at me. He thought I was going to. He's used to people, and I saw an otter there as well on the pitch and putt courts. It's over here by the army.
Okay, that's.
So I'm big into nature, and you know we should maybe fit. Have you enough said on that, or do you want to? You were going on.
Yeah, well, I'll just say. I mean, I think there's a huge generational disconnect here, where younger people, and to me, the great tragedy is how this is affecting our birth rate now. Where we had an above replacement birth rate just in the early 2010s, one of the few countries in Europe. It's absolutely cratering now. And one of the big factors, we have one of the highest rates of young people in their 20s still living at home with their parents.
Yeah.
I think it's you know, it's well over 50% now. I think it's in the 70s. And that puts us, the only countries that have that in Europe are like Balkan countries where that's kind of a tradition, Italy. But there's just this huge disconnect where whatever the GDP numbers, if you're a young person now and you're trying to get on a housing ladder, start a family, I mean, it's next to impossible. Either all of your money is going to be spent on rent, or all of it's going to be spent on a mortgage. And even to do that, you're going to have wealthy parents to provide money for a deposit because of all of these lending laws that came in. So
and in fairness to the immigrants too, like, and you know, I remember renting out a room a while ago, I don't know, but and it was predominantly Indian people ringing me. You know, it's gas. It's you know, it's all foreigners. If you put a house up for rent, if you look at Dublin rental things, it's all foreigners now looking for places. But they have it hard coming in. Can you imagine coming into Ireland and then trying to rent a place as well? And you know what I mean?
I don't know if you've seen it. I'm sure you've seen this, but how common it is in Dublin for either Brazilians or Indians or some group like this to rent an apartment or a house and put 20, 30 people in it.
That's the way it is.
And have, you know, literally like convert a bedroom into like a hostel room where you have 4 or 5 bunk beds and sleeping bags, and they're just cramming people in. And this is like, this is who you're competing against. If you want, you're a single guy, maybe you want to get on the housing ladder, maybe you move to Dublin as a professional and you have to rent. And this is what you're competing against, is there's 30 people from outside Ireland that want to rent the same place, and they'll all sleep on the floor and in sleeping bags.
They'll drop their standards just to get in the door. It's sad what's happened, and Kieran Crazy House Prices is good on that. Do you ever see that guy on Twitter?
No.
He's got a brilliant platform on that stuff. You know, like me being into nature, I'm looking at here, there's different tern species, there's all these gulls, and there's little birds nesting in this boat here, there's pipits, and you know, I love my wildlife, and you know, I didn't have a whole lot of chance to do research on you, but I did look at one of your videos that you did a while back, was on how mass immigration sort of affects the environment. And we spoke briefly about it there, and the two-facedness of the Green Party and wanting 5 more million people to come into Ireland, and just how, you know, population expansion, people from poorer countries coming into wealthier countries, you know, it'll affect the environment so much more. Not that they don't have the right to, we'll say. I'm not saying that, oh, you need to stay there because you know, it's better for the environment if you stay there. But what I mean is just the level now of growth that we need to facilitate in Ireland, and Ireland is already a biodiversity dead zone, I'll be honest with you, right? Yeah. I was in Connemara there at the weekend, and people think, oh, Connemara's beautiful, there's nowhere nicer than Connemara, but it's actually, it's void of about 98% of the birds that should be there, that would have been there, we'll say, 1,000 years ago or whatever. So it was once a forest. Now it's kind of like a grassland, really. So it's very, very low on wildlife. And, you know, I'd love to see, like, I'm personally, people think that, you know, conservatives or people that are on the right, Maria, want this huge family thing. That will have as many children as you want. I'm not really like that. Just because, you know, we've huge influxes of people coming in to Ireland from countries that have huge birth rates, that doesn't mean that we should have to explode our population. I would like to see less emigration from Irish people. I'd like to see Irish people in the health system paid so that they're enticed to stay here. I'd love to see governmental incentives to, you know, we'll say reward people who have families and buy houses and here, you know, there's all this stuff that I think could be done. But I'd also love to see the environment looked after. And I know that you just, if you'd like to just share what you think of that, maybe just we can finish on that.
I actually wrote an essay on this before on rewilding. I'll have to give you a copy of my first book, the nationalism book. It's in that.
Oh yeah, we need to mention the book. Sorry, yeah. So just future me, future us here. Keith has just given me this fabulous book that he has edited and contributed to, surely.
Yeah. It's got an introduction in there.
Brilliant.
Got a bit of biographical info on all the writers.
And it's got gorgeous artwork.
Yeah, very happy with the cover.
Yeah, it's
I'm
really
glad
cool.
it gets your approval. You're the
graphic
photography and graphics
graphic
guy.
designer. So I'm liking it, yeah, cool.
Yeah. Hope you're happy with it. And it's for anyone that wants to buy it, it's available now. All regions on Amazon. It's the safest place to get it.
Excellent.
And
Cool, good man.
Yeah, the essay is called "Make Europe Wild Again," but it's about this concept that's taken off the last few years of rewilding areas. That, like, the true environmentalism is you just allow an area of land to become wild again.
You don't plant.
Yeah, and that actually a big part of the ecosystem of Europe prior to humans really transforming it was that you had these huge herbivores, grazing animals.
Yeah.
That were really central to the whole ecosystem because, you know, as they travel and as they graze and they cover huge expanses, they're like digging up the soil, they're carrying bacteria with them, they're spreading seeds through the manure and so on. And that this was actually like the whole basis for this thriving ecosystem, and that we've really totally lost that. And like you said, you know, Ireland is seen as this green place, this very... this like a retreat from urbanism, and you can find so many great eco spaces here. But the deforestation here was really terrible. Like we've lost 98 to 99% of the forest cover.
Natural oakland and stuff,
And that was mostly because of British colonialism.
It was, but you know that it's a long time since British were cutting down trees, or we were cutting down trees for them. You get some big trees since then would have grown. You know, we haven't exactly been brilliant at letting things rewild, and you wouldn't need to plant any of this stuff. It would come back itself, as you say.
Yeah.
People think, oh, we planted 200 trees. That's not actually rewilding. But you know, you have the sickest spruce then, and I know that that's required for the building industry, but that's a complete dead zone, and you'll see that out in Connemara and stuff. And you mentioned the greys, and they're like those ox or whatever, you know, these large native cattle, I suppose, or whatever they were, whatever type of grazing animal. But the sheep, the black-faced sheep, sheep is a thankless business, which you probably know in Connemara and stuff. They literally, they don't get anything for the wool. They have to pay people to take away the wool when they shear them sometimes. Then the lamb might make a certain amount of money, but it's heavily subsidised, sheep farmers. But all these sheep are out in the land, they're grazing up, they're eating every little sapling that would turn into some sort of a tree or shrub or whatever. So it's very, you know, I'd love to see Ireland, like, I'd say, right, maybe can you imagine if we were less EU-driven country, if we were a little bit more independent? Imagine what it would be like if we had our own fishing waters. You know, rewilded certain areas for tourism, maybe a bit of...
Yeah, it would be amazing for tourism. I mean, because they're doing this in a lot of countries. Spain has a huge area they're rewilding, and it really, like, again, talking about like, is environmentalism a left-right issue? I mean, it really, there is something like kind of nationalistic about it in that it does bring the unique character of a land out. You know, like if you look at the rewilded areas of Spain, they have like their native oxen and bison there now. And animals you just don't really see anywhere in Europe. Like you think of Europe and you think of the uniqueness of different countries and you kind of think of the cities, you know, you think of like Sistine Chapel in Italy and so on. But actually it was like a wonderfully diverse ecology across these different countries. And even you look at like the Scottish Highlands in areas they rewild, and you start to see that like this small area of the globe is actually wonderfully diverse.
It is.
And we've lost so much of that and really it's quite recent history. I mean there were native boar here until fairly recently, a lot of different species. All of the bird species we've lost with the loss of tree cover. I mean there's so many things you don't even account for because you know you lose one thing in an ecosystem and you lose everything.
I mean I look at the hen harrier, the marsh harrier and even species of owls and stuff there. They have it so hard in Ireland, you know. I was on the way down here and you know I was in the car and I was pulled up in traffic on the Dublin Road and there was a rook type of crow just in a bus stop and I was just foraging for I was trying to find tiny little fragments of crisps that somebody eating crisps might have dropped from their mouth or something. And they're so resourceful and like hooded crows can be terrible, magpies can be terrible. They'll raid nests and stuff, but rooks are kind of an honourable crow. But it was so resourceful and I was saying like how the poor fuckers, like these animals have been on the planet for hundreds of thousands of years in their current form, and now they're having to kind of get on with it, with what the changes we've made. And I see it with birds trying to forage in the cities and stuff. But it reminded me of the Irish. Like this rook kind of for me symbolised Irish people now. Going forward in 20, 30 years, we're just going to have to kind of get on with it and survive somehow. So it's an awful sad way to finish the video, but...
And it does tie back to immigration. You mentioned the video I made before. I mean, I pulled up again. This stuff, no more than like the sociology of multiculturalism, like this stuff is out there. It just doesn't get discussed.
Yeah.
But they have done studies to look at like the environmental impact of growing the population through immigration.
Yeah.
And one of the things that has actually helped the environment in Europe a lot in the last few years is a lot of rural areas in especially like Central and Eastern Europe have become more depopulated as people move to the cities, and also just, you know, falling birth rates in some of these countries. But it's actually had a wonderful effect for the animal species there and bringing back ecological diversity. But like there's been studies commissioned for the EU that said, you know, basically with the current amount of immigration, you're going to lose this many hundreds of species in the next 50 years. With more, you'll lose, you know, this many more species, and with less, you'll save this many species. So I mean, we're literally sacrificing hundreds of native plant animal species for growth and immigration, because one of the biggest cause of species extinction in the West right now, and I guess people, you think of animal extinction, I suppose you think of like people poaching rhinos in Africa.
Oh yeah, they get so mad over that, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, but you could look at even in North America, like you can find dozens of species that are scheduled to go extinct in the next 10 years. And if you look into most of them, I did before for that video I made, like you have a few species in Florida alone that are going extinct. Like there's a unique sea turtle in Florida that's going extinct. And almost all of them in Western Europe and the US, it's all because of urban sprawl. Yeah. That as these cities spread out, it encroaches on their habitat.
It's happening here.
It affects the water system. They're gone very soon. Yeah. And that's pretty much all of the species loss we have right now. And again, that's just a political choice. But, you know, have you ever heard the Green Party talk about species extinction in Europe because of urban sprawl through immigration?
I know, but they'll have the picture of the wealthy hunter, you know, that's paid a couple of thousand to some, you know, African little, we'll say, game hunter type resource, just so that they can go in and hunt or whatever. And then people at the left will be going, man, oh, look at this cunt, I hope they, you know, or you'll see the odd viral story, hunter that shot wolf or lion was mauled to death. Oh, yes! You know, they're thrilled. But like, you'll never see them on about, you know, what is some of these other countries, the treatments. And I'm seeing video after video of these non-Western countries of animal cruelty coming up on Facebook. Some of the stuff they're doing, I won't even mention now that I see done to animals in the name of getting viral video views and stuff. But I don't see the same anger from the pro animals rights people, as you see, to, like, as I said, the hunters and stuff. So that's I could chat to you for hours on that stuff. But I guess we need to get another cup of tea or something here. I'll need to warm up.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Well, before you stand up,
get away from the rats.
Yeah, exactly. No, look, you know, it's very loose to chat. I planned on asking you a load of questions that people would have left on that image, but look, it's good to catch up.
I think we could go for another few hours here. So
Keith, good man. I'm getting a bit chilly now, actually. Yeah,
no, good stuff.
Thanks, Keith Woods. Great, I enjoyed the chat. God bless.